good evening everybody and welcome to this meeting of the Planning Committee on 13th of October 2022. Can I remind everybody here and at home that this is a hybrid meeting and therefore only those members that are in the chamber this evening are eligible to vote. We only have two items on this evening agenda, which is items 5 and 6, both of the same property, and I'll ask the officer to explain that when she comes on. First off, item number 1 is to ask for apologies for absence.
Yes, I've received apologies from Councillor Bandari.
Thank you. Are there any other apologies? I think I got an apology email from Councillor Skinner. Are there any other apologies from anybody? Okay, thank you. The second, I'll just ask the officer just to go through those members that are online if they could confirm their attendance, please.
Thank you, Chair. We have Councillor Mrs Mackenzie.
She's still muted.
If you could confirm that you are present, that would be great. Okay, Councillor Mossam.
Yeah.
Councillor Mrs Mackenzie Boyle.
Speaking.
Present.
Oh, and I can see that Councillor Mackenzie, she has confirmed that she's here also, so I'll hand back over to you, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. The next item on the agenda is to approve as a record the minutes of the previous meeting. Are there any questions of accuracy of those minutes? In which case, can I have a move of their acceptance, please? Thank you, Councillor Birch, seconded by Councillor Dr. Barnard. All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. The next item on the agenda is urgent items of business. I haven't been notified of any.
No, none notified, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. As I said earlier, the application 44, which was the telecommunications mast, has been removed from this application, from this agenda. I understand it is now recommended by officers for refusal. So we move on then to application number 1543, which is Shelley Avenue, which of course is also related to the next application. And I'll hand that over to, is it you, Joe, doing that one? Or is it Katie?
It's me.
Katie, sorry Katie, thank you.
I'll just share my screen. Please, can you confirm that you can see the plans?
Yeah, we can see the plans, but we can't hear you very well.
Okay.
Oh, I can see them on here. Sorry. Yeah?
Can you hear me now better?
That's better, thank you, Katie. And yes, we can see the plans, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Application 19/00023/4 was approved by the Planning Committee with the legal agreement completed on the 14th of April of this year for the erection of 3 dwellings with associated landscaping, parking and access. Members would note, as the Chairman highlighted, that 2 different planning applications are now being submitted for this site, which are both on the agenda tonight, both proposed 3 dwellings. I will quickly explain the differences between the 2 types of application. Application 22/00425/4, which is the subject of this presentation, relates to a full planning application and considers 3 dwellings. The application is required to be considered as a full application, as the application site has increased in size to that of the approved application and changes the red line boundary. It therefore could not be considered as an amendment to the original application. The other item on this agenda relates to 22/00361/4 and relates to a Section 73 application. An application can be made under Section 73 of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990 to vary or remove conditions associated with a planning application. One of the uses of a Section 73 application is to seek a minor material amendment where there's a relevant condition that can be varied and which the application has applied for. And this is relevant to the next application, which will be discussed under that presentation. Moving to the full application, I firstly draw members' attention to the supplementary report. The site plan on the screen shows the development in relation to the surrounding properties, with 7 Shewing Close here, whose garden is proposed to be used for development. 29 Warfield Road is located here, with their garden and side access to be used for the development. The properties in Husson Road are located along this boundary here to the north of the site. And 28 Warfield Road located here to the south of the site. Compared with the approved application, the actual site, overall site layout, site size has been increased in this location here. Further land from 7 Shewing Close here.
Is there any chance you can oh, that's great, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Katie. Carry on.
The site plan shows the proposed layout with the approved houses, previously approved houses, dotted in red behind the new plots. So plot 1 is here with the new dwelling projecting out further than the red line here. Then plot 2 there with the dwellings largely the same width as the previously approved application, then extending further at the front here and here, with porches coming out further at the front. Then you have the location of plot 3 with the red line showing the previous outline, then the new position of plot 3, which is now closer to 29 Warfield Road, and leaving this separation distance of 13 metres here and here. Dwelling now fronting onto the access road rather than set at an angle. Parking on the site is shown as 3 parking spaces for each of the dwellings, with plot 1's parking location here, plot 2 having the parking here, then plot 3 parkings in this location here. Just show the elevations. The elevation to plot 1 shows a traditional design with a new level of accommodation created in the roof space, which is lit by a window on the front elevation, then further roof lights to the side rear elevation, the additional 2nd floor accommodation shown on the floor plan here. Plot 2 again follows the same design with the additional accommodation in the roof lit by second floor window and roof lights. Then plot 3 again is a 2.5-storey dwelling with accommodation again achieved in the roof with roof lights on the front rear elevations. I'll just remind members of the approved elevations. So this is the previously approved design for plot 1, plot 2, then the previously approved plot 3. The photograph on the screen shows the existing 7 Shewing Close. A view of 7 Shewing Close from the rear. Then a view of 7 Shewing Close looking towards the rear of 29 Warfield Close. And a view within the site from 7 Shewing Close looking towards the properties in Husson Road. Further view of a property along Shewing Close, number 8. Then looking at the side of 29 Warfield Road. A further view of the side of Warfield Road where the access into the site is achieved. A further view looking to the rear, looking from the rear of to the side of 29 Warfield Road. A wider view from in the garden. An existing dense hedge currently runs along the boundary of 29 Warfield Road with the properties in Husson Road. Then a view of Warfield Road, a view from types in Husson Road. The application relates to a full application for 3 dwellings following the extant consent for 3 dwellings. The site falls within the settlement boundary and the principle of 3 houses on the site has therefore been established. The main changes to the dwellings are their designs and sizes and the creation of rooms in the roof to be lit by roof lights. The heights have been amended to be the same as the extant consent. The site layout has shown the position of the new houses compared with those approved. Separation distances would still allow an acceptable layout to be achieved, whilst maintaining an acceptable relationship with the neighbouring dwellings and impact on the character of the area. The proposal provides 3 parking spaces for each dwelling, which is acceptable to the Highway Authority. The position regarding biodiversity and drainage was addressed under the extant consent. Positions are proposed to be repeated to address these matters. The application is therefore recommended for approval in line with the recommendations within the committee report and supplementary report. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Katie. Okay, members, I'll ask you for questions. Just to remind you that there is already an extant planning permission for 3 properties on this site. So your questions need to reflect that. Are there any questions from members? Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. The first question for me is, what are the differences between the 2 applications before us tonight?
If you look on the picture that Katie showed us, Katie, could you put that up again? That the one with the red lines, with the new.
Yes, that's the footprint, but there are a number of other things. Yeah.
Sorry.
That's the footprint, but there's a number of other things that are in.
Yeah, position.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Could you just explain what the differences are between the approved application and the sought application? Thank you.
I'll just share my screen again. I'm having some difficulty.
I think what you're looking for might be on the supplementary report, isn't it, Katie?
So the actual, did you want the actual size differences? That
No, I think those are clear on that diagram that you showed, but there are, do the conditions like the biodiversity and the soft and hard landscaping and so on, do they all coincide with one another now? If these are accepted?
Yeah, if you look on the supplementary report, they've all been rewritten to reflect the new application.
But the things on the supplementary are for 365, And 425 has had challenges which have been answered, but I don't know whether they're the same.
Sorry, would you just like to clarify your
Yeah.
questions?
So
Specifically.
365 had lots and lots of different changes under the section 3, and will have if 425 didn't go through. But 425 seems to have taken precedence. Are there any differences between those two in terms of conditions or anything else?
In terms of 425, the one that I've just presented, many of the conditions still require details to be submitted again.
Right.
So for example, there's conditions requiring landscaping, and that needs to come in again. And there's a condition regarding the drainage, which needs to be submitted again,
Yeah.
as it's a separate application to the
Okay.
section
So
73 application.
we would condition it so they'd have to do those things in order to get 425 through if we said allow it.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's subject to conditions.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And can I just clarify what this slope is? Because there's a slope. Is it between Warfield Road downward to Shering Close, so the flow of water? And how about to Piggy Wood?
Sorry, are we talking about levels or
Yes, levels.
drainage?
Levels down, and I think it slopes down to Shering Close and to Piggy Wood.
The land does slope down, yes,
Yeah.
from Warfield Road to Shering Close. There is a difference in the land levels, so
Yeah.
water would
Tend to
naturally
go
slope
that
down.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. I found it, if I may, difficult to assess the distance between the nearest house on Hewson Road and plot 3, is it? Yeah, the nearest house to Hewson Road. I know that's reduced a metre, but how much?
If you look on page 19, 9.7,
I have.
it says the position of plot 3 has been changed from the approved consent to set it close to the side of number 29 Warfield Road, leaving a separation distance of 13 metres from the side of the property compared with 18 metres under the approved consent.
I'm sorry, I don't mean number 3. I mean plot 2, which is the nearest to Hewson Road, the back gardens, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Plot 2 is the closest to 26 Husson Road.
Yeah.
So there's a distance from the side of plot 2 to the rear of 16.5 metres, and under the approved application it was 16.7 metres. So there's virtually no change in terms of the distance from the side of plot 2 to the rear of number 26.
It's on page 23 at 9.18.
Yeah. If you look at this plot with the surrounding houses on Google Maps with its the satellite picture on, as it were, you can see there's a large tree that's due to be removed, I believe, that overshadows the back of that house. And I just wonder if putting an even taller house there, whether that sunlight is going to be blocked completely.
What's your question, Councillor Brown?
Is the house going to block the sunlight more than the tree?
Okay, so
that
has
is
a
done?
has a sunlight survey been undertaken? Is that what you're asking?
Oh, it's a good question. No, I haven't. I don't know. Can I?
Well, is that what
Yes,
you're asking?
Yes, please.
The separation distance is virtually the same as the extant consent, and it's 16.5 metres, which when you do a simple sunlight assessment, it clears the roof of the new dwelling.
Oh.
But that a separation distance of 16 plus metres is acceptable to not cause a significant loss of light to a rear of a property.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Virgo.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Couple of things, and I haven't got the supplementary, so forgive me if you've said it in that. I'm just looking at Bracknell Town Council, and they seem to make 2 points. One is overlooking, Katie. Has that all been carefully looked at with the roof windows?
Yes, the roof lights are being positioned on the plans to be away from the neighbouring dwellings. But did you want me to share my screen so you can see where they are?
It's worth doing, I think.
Whilst Katie's looking at that, the roof lights, or Velux windows as I call them, are all above 1.7 metres above floor level of the floor to prevent overlooking as well. Katie, do you have that?
Apologies, I've just lost my. I've just bring my.
No panic, it's all right.
See the presentation. On plots 1 and 2, they've been positioned here, the roof lights looking inward, then to the rear here. And there'd be a separation distance of over 30 metres to the rear of Sherring Close. So there'd be no overlooking to the properties in Husson Road. And then on plot 3, on this elevation, they're set looking this way, then that way. So there would be no overlooking from this property to the properties in Husson Road. And also the conditions for the roof lights to be set. Plot 1, plot 2 and plot 3 to be set 1.7 metres above the internal floor levels, which would prevent any overlooking.
Thank you very much, Katie. Councillor Dr Barnard.
Can I just ask? No, that's okay. Probably again, this has been covered, but I noticed they talk about biodiversity, but presumably, has this been altered? It hasn't, has it, from the original permission? That's the question. I noticed there's no report from the biodiversity officer, unless that's in the supplementary, but...
No, the biodiversity officer hasn't responded on this application. However, the last extant consent had strict conditions to do with biodiversity, and it was mainly badgers that were known to forage on the site. So those conditions have been repeated under this application, and under the next application that I present, conditions have been addressed in terms of biodiversity, with the biodiversity officer commenting on the mitigation for the badgers.
Okay, thank you.
Just for your information, you may not have the supplementary report in front of you, but condition 17 of the supplementary report says the biodiversity enhancements shown on 21021, the numbers of the plans, shall be performed, observed, complied with prior to occupation of the dwellings and retained in perpetuity. Okay. Councillor Dr Barnard.
Thank you very much, Chair. I have 2 questions. The first relates to the time when we considered the application on this site before, and that relates to, was there a reason why there was no requirement for any visitor parking? Because there's been building work along that road recently, and looking at these plans and the old ones, the only place visitors could park is actually on the main road, because there are 3 spaces, and if I look at the layout, I'm not convinced, at the weekend, for example, if you had, you know, 2 cars plus a child's car plus a visitor, it could soak it up. So it's more really reflecting back on that. And then I've got another question about the neighbourhood plan, Bracknell Town Council neighbourhood plan.
If I can pick up
Andy,
the
do you want to pick that up?
question. Yeah, Andy Wells, Highways.
Thank you.
Our parking standards SPD table 6 for residential development does not require visitor parking for developments of fewer than 5 units. So there is no parking standards SPD requirement for visitor parking on this development layout.
So
It's the simple answer to your question.
no, thank you. So to be clear, there's an acceptance, therefore, as there was in the last time, that visitors will have to park on the main road.
It
there's
is the
nowhere on-
intent. The residential parking standards are intended in 3 spaces per dwelling to cater for residential parking. It may be possible for visitors to park, particularly in front of the 3 spaces for plots 1 and 2 within the turning head, but our parking standards SPD does not require visitor parking for development of this scale. Equally, the road widths in places may allow visitor parking, but it is going to clog the turning head somewhat.
Okay, yeah. They park on the main road, they're braver than me. My second question is, since we last considered this, I believe that the Bracknell Town Council neighbourhood plan has become a material plan in place. Could the officers please explain if in the context of the Bracknell Town Council neighbourhood plan, if this development is consistent with the aims and ambitions of that, or actually contradicts what was implied by that, as I believe the neighbourhood plan is actually material consideration, which is the basis on which a referendum was sought amongst residents.
I would need to bring up the neighbourhood plan, as there's a specific policy that relates to infill and backland development from the neighbourhood plan. However, I don't believe this development conflicts with that plan, but I'd need to bring up the exact policy wording. If I can stop sharing my screen.
I think in this case, I understand Councillor Dr. Barnard's question, and quite right, you should ask it. But as there is an extant position of 3 properties that have already had planning permission that were given before that became, if you like, in law, I don't think it applies in this.
Okay, but in my sort of naivety, Chair, there is an extant permission that was considered without the plan in place. This is a new application which I believe should be considered on its merits, and therefore if any of the detail of this application conflicts with the neighbourhood plan, I think it's something, Chair, that should have been addressed in the report.
Katie, do you want to comment on that?
No, I don't believe it does conflict with the neighbourhood plan. There's nothing that says you cannot have backland development in the plan. It advises that it has to give careful consideration to the backland development, but as in this case of this application, careful consideration has been given in terms of its impact on character and the impact on the neighbouring dwellings. I don't believe there's a conflict with the neighbourhood plan.
That's helpful. Can I ask in future, Chair, that we make sure that for future applications of this nature, that plan is carefully considered and documented for the benefit of local residents? Thank you.
Certainly, thank you, Councillor Dr. Barnard. Very good point. Councillor Green.
Oh, sorry. The scheme has got quite a bit bigger now on what it was before. Can we remove the permitted development rights going forward?
They already have been.
They already have been, have they?
They already have been.
Right, thank you. I missed that, sorry.
Yeah. Any other questions? Okay, I'll come to Councillor Badibo and then Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Badibo here. Oh, can you help me with the definition of self-build?
In terms of self-build, it would be a developer that would, or an individual that would build the property themselves, so it wouldn't be a house builder. But in terms of this application, the only implication it has is in terms of the SIL regulations, whereby they can apply for SIL relief.
And just to add, sorry, Katie, I didn't know if you're not finished. Carry.
So that they can apply for seal relief under the seal regulations, which they would need to do, like if the application was approved.
Yeah, there's also a marker put on the planning permission that it's a self-build, and should they attempt to sell the properties on the open market within 3 years, we can claw back. Well, number one, the marker be on there, and so any search from a solicitor would raise that. And if they did sell it commercially, we could claw back. In fact, we have done successfully in the past. Claw back sell. Max, I don't know if you're online because we discussed this earlier, didn't we? Could you comment?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Max Baker, Assistant Director Planning. Yeah, there is an actual definition of self-build for that purpose, which is essentially a dwelling built by a person or commissioned by that person and occupied by that person as their sole or main residence. And the seal regulations specify a number of years in which they have to remain in occupation without selling the property, during which the council can claw back, and we do register it as a land charge. Sorry, we do register it as a land charge, so we do tend to pick up any that try to sell when they've claimed exemption within that period. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Does that answer your question?
Yes, for the definition. So now my second question following on from that is, if we approve or we're minded to approve this, does that guarantee, because it says here self-built dwelling, are we actually approving that title of self-built dwelling?
Yes.
As part of the,
Yeah, as the Assistant Director explained, if we approve this as a self-build, a charge will be put on the property, just similar to a mortgage charge, if you like, and that would show on any search that should that wish to be sold on the open market in the future, that charge would have to be fulfilled and still would have to be paid.
yeah, sorry, Chair, I'm not really worried about the sale thing. I'm more worried about the definition of self-built and us changing that definition by approving this plan. Because technically that's what we'll be doing if we did that, if we do approve this plan tonight. Sorry. No, not by definition. We're talking about 3 dwellings here. One person will not live in all 3. So technically it's not self-built. Unless there's 3 owners.
Not necessarily one developer will build all 3.
So are there 3 owners? Because I'm trying to just clarify the definition and make sure that we don't change the definition of what self-built is, regardless
Max,
of what the sale is.
do you want to come back? Because we discussed this, didn't we?
Yes, thank you, Chair. The definition is a dwelling built by a person or commissioned by that person. So they could all be built by the same builder, provided they were commissioned by separate people and they were bespoke to their requirements. And that is the legal definition. And it has to be occupied by that person as their sole or main residence. So they can't, sort of build it and then rent it out to someone or anything like that. It has to be self-build in terms of them commissioning it or building it themselves and then occupying it. And that's what they're applying for. I mean, it's not a separate use class, but it really is under the seal regulations that it makes a difference.
So are we saying, just for my clarification, are we saying there are 3?
We're not saying anything.
Okay, my understanding is, so just to be clear, there are 3 owners, or this is not a planning material consideration?
In order to qualify as self-build, and certainly in order to gain the seal exemption, there would need to be a separate owner and occupier for each house, and they would need to have commissioned and or built that property themselves.
So my question is, do we know that is the case, or we don't need to?
That's what they've applied for, and they will only get the seal exemption if that is the case.
Yeah. Okay.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you. That's quite put things out of my head.
If you're
Going
actually
to
going
the-
back, if you look, there are 3 applicants on this application.
But they already live in the
Yeah,
house.
sorry. Yeah, okay. Councillor Brown.
That's all right. Looking at the drainage of the site, which is of some concern to me, I've forgotten which thing I've touched on. Drainage design plan. It has a legend at the bottom, and part of it is extent of permeable paving membrane, and that's in a light green. Well, I can't see any. I can see one green heavy line here and there at the entrances, but other than that, I can't see any. And I wonder about this permeable paving. I can't work out where it is. Can
Okay,
you
Katie, do you
enlighten me,
want to see if
please?
you can point it out on the plan, please?
Yeah, so sorry, Katie, if I may.
Yes, please. Definitely.
Okay.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to pull out the drainage plan that has been submitted. And then I'll just quickly share my screen as well. Yeah, so please, can you see my screen?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, okay. So the kind of brown, all this brown area here is of permeable paving. And then around the plot itself, this would be non-permeable construction. So what that would mean is that it will have some slopes on there to make sure that the water flows away from the plot onto the permeable paving for drainage purposes. And then all the kind of green area is shown to be of public open landscaping area, so it will be green area. So I think basically what it means is the access road and then the parking areas will all be of permeable paving.
Okay, it's also dealt with on the supplementary report
Yes.
on section 21.
Yes. My question, because it's been stated in these reports that the permeable paving is not used as part of the calculations because it can't be maintained for the life of the development. Now, looking at that plan, and I think that's most of the hard areas.
What's your question, councillor?
How much of the site is actually going to be able to take water, like the green bits that we see there?
Well, I think this plan shows it, doesn't it? It's the green.
Well, it's quite a big proportion now that is not exposed to rain and natural drainage, and
Yeah, so as you would appreciate, the green areas would actually be self-draining. So you'd imagine that it probably would be some kind of soft landscaping, grassed area, yeah, whatever. So when it rains, I think the assumption here is that it will be able to drain water, the water that falls on its own surface. So it would be left with a permeable paving. And as it has been designed, the permeable paving will have some form of storage underneath it. So you have a layer, the first layer will be of permeable paving. Then you have the granular material, which would be able to provide some storage to soak up any runoff that comes onto it. And if I may just scroll up, these pipes that you see here, they are perforated pipes. So as the water soaks into the permeable paving, if it exceeds the capacity of the permeable paving, then this perforated pipe would intercept the runoff, and then this is the direction of the flow into what is called, it's a manhole with what is called a flow control. So it will restrict the flows that will leave the site westwards and then into a culvert here. So that will be the drainage scheme for the permeable paved areas. And then when it comes to the plot itself, or the buildings, or the water that will fall onto the roofs, as part of the drainage strategy, they have proposed underground tanks. So these are what you see in the blue shading. So there will be underground geocellular tanks, which are quite big, massive underground tanks that will intercept the flows from the plot itself. And then that will also direct it into this manhole that I previously mentioned, and then it will flow westwards and out of the site. And we have checked the supporting documents that was provided as part of the application, and we are it does meet the requirements to ensure no flooding occurs on the site for a given, what we called design criteria. It has been passed. That is why we were able to recommend the discharge of that condition.
Okay, thank you very much, Katie. Does that answer your question? Thank you. Vice Chair, you've got a question.
Katie, just one question, and that's to do with the gates. I know that there's a provision for gates within, I think, a certain distance from the highways. And in fact, it's covered in the supplementary in considerable detail in terms of how it's going to operate in the intercom system. There's a box underneath that, and I just wonder what the wording is and what it represents. I think it's on the site plan, and there's an arrow going up, and I just wondered what the box actually says. It's too small to see on the screen, and maybe you could either blow it up or tell me what it says.
Don't blow it up.
No, it's sort of not.
Do you want me to pick that one up, Katie? I've got it on
yes,
the screen.
Right, fine.
No problems.
Back again.
I think the application we're talking about, Vice Chair, is the one on the top left of the screen. I've got both applications, the original and the proposed here. The annotation says pedestrian and vehicle access gates to have public access between 8 AM and 6 PM and key code access at all other times. Call pad accessible to cars at all times. Nevertheless, there is a condition on the supplementary which requires details of the operation of the gates and any access and intercom system to be provided. So, notwithstanding what text is shown on there, the details of the operation of the gate and its access arrangements still need to be provided by condition.
Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Dr. Barnard.
Forgive me, I'm kind of struggling with something here, and I hope you can help me on this. So we've been told this is a self-build application. The owners have to commission the build. We've got some very detailed conditions around shared driveways in terms of drainage and things like that. How does this work in practice? Because it's not as if it's one, if it has to be done in a certain way. My understanding on self-build was that brought an element of individuality to it, but this seems very prescribed across the whole site in terms of how everything locks together. So is it basically someone buys the land and says, all right, Mr. Builder, you're building this for me, I'm commissioning you directly rather than two other people? How do we ensure that all this communal stuff is actually delivered to the standard required to make this work in terms of sustainability and all the other issues? Because surely that is a material planning consideration.
Yes, it is. And you'll see that the application is in 3 names. This whole application.
So that's how they. So that's how they
is in
satisfy
3
that.
names. So how they allocate costs of the communal part of the application is not a planning
But do they-
consideration. If they can't undertake any part of this approved planning application, if it is approved, then the whole thing falls. They can't, you can't just build one house on its own and the other 2 are not built until 2 years. Well, it could be built 2 years later because you've got 3 years.
Well, that's the point. That's what I'm trying to make. That we've just had an answer there given about very detailed considerations to manage access, drainage, communal areas.
But if you look at the conditions, it says no property can be occupied until.
Okay.
So, you know, you could build one property, but they can't occupy it until all of those conditions are in place.
Right, okay. Thank you. First time we've had one of these for a long time, so
Good.
appreciate your patience.
Councillor Hayden.
Thank you, Chair. On the representations received, are they the original representations of the original planning application, or are these new representations?
I think you've got a mixture of both.
So I'm struggling to see if there are any planning reasons why this should be rejected. Am I missing something? That's a question. Sorry, Chair.
That's for you to decide, Councillor. Okay, I think we've exhausted the questions, unless anybody tells me differently. And there's no one online? No, thank you. Therefore, I will move the officer's recommendation,
28.
which is on page 28,
Supplementary pages 1 to 5.
as amended by the supplementary report on pages 1 to 5. If I have a seconder, please. Thank you, Councillor Virgo. Members, as you would have seen and we have discussed, this is an application to amend a previously approved application for 3 properties. So the actual the idea of having the principle of having 3 properties on this site has already been approved under previous approved applications. What we're dealing with is the fact that these properties have been changed slightly in size and in one case in position. And I think your questions show that you're interested in things like drainage and overlooking, and the officer has answered your questions. Does a seconder wish to speak? You're going to reserve. Does any other member wish to speak? Councillor Balibo.
Thank you, Chair. I will be supporting the officer's recommendation on this. My only disappointment is only that I would have loved to see a sort of grand design type thing when we talk about self-built, some more adventurous design in terms of the build and everything. But it looks nice, and I'll be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member wish to speak? Seconder, you're reserved. Did you want to come back and say anything?
No, I don't actually. I support it, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, as nobody's spoken against it, I won't sum up. All those in favour to approve, please show. And that's unanimous. Thank you, members. Okay, we move on to the second application, which is on the same property, which is on page 37 of your report. Katie, do you just want to quickly take us through that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'll just share my screen. Can you see the plans?
Yeah, I can. It's quite small. If you can make it larger, that would be useful. Thank you.
Thank you. This application now relates to a Section 73 application for the erection of 3 dwellings. The applicants have applied to vary Condition 2, the approved plans condition, to allow the consideration of amendments to the original application. The main amendments to the application would result in the dwellings using the roof spaces and creating extra rooms with the use of roof lights. Just go down to the site plan. Positions of the dwellings to the boundaries have been amended in this application, with the red line again showing the previously approved dwellings, the new position of the new dwellings. On this application, plot 2 extends slightly further to the side boundary compared with the previous application. Plot 1 extends slightly out to the rear and slightly to the central boundary. Again, with plot 2 doing the same. Then on plot 3, the dwelling has been shifted to front the access road, whereas before it was slightly at an angle. Parking again is shown in these locations for the plots with 3 spaces. And then for plot 3, they have 2 parking spaces here, parking space there. The relationship with 29 Warfield Road is very similar to the approved application. I'll just show the elevation.
Katie,
plans.
can you just explain how does this differ from the application that we have just approved?
So the full application you just approved, plot 3 was located closer to the side of 29 Warfield Road, and there was additional land taken from in the boundary of Warfield Road. And the plots 1 and 2 are slightly different. They're smaller than the last application, but the plot 2 extends slightly further towards Hutton Road. But again, the dwellings are proposing rooms in the roof space, which the last application did. So the changes probably are not very significant compared with the last application, but this application has been dealt with under a section 73 because the red line was exactly the same as the approved application. And this application also proposes to discharge conditions, which I'll run through now.
Okay, thanks. Councillor Birch.
On a point of procedure, given my way I voted on the previous one, have I predetermined, sorry?
No, I don't think so, because these are just changes to conditions.
Fine, thank you.
Would somebody like to confirm that is correct, the advice that I've just given Councillor Birch?
Well, I do. I'm happy to do that. But this application
I
is
think Max
materially.
is going to just come up.
Yeah, I'm happy to confirm that as well. It's a different type of application, so and I don't see that. You've got to determine both applications, and you've got to do them in a certain order. So I can't see that doing them in any particular order is going to predetermine in any way. Thanks.
Thank you. Just let the officer finish the. Have you got a question on procedure?
Yes. What if we now pass 361? Is that going to take precedence over 425, or if we pass both and they can choose between them?
Max?
The latter. You can have more than one planning permission on a site, as we know, and it is up to the owner/developer as to which one they implement.
Right, carry on, Katie. Thank you.
Okay. The plans on the screen relate to plot 1, and again a very similar house type to what you've just seen, with the room in the roof, the extra accommodation at the 2nd floor, but the overall height of the dwelling has the extant consent. Moving on to plot 2, which is the same design and relationship with the room in the roof. And then plot 3, again,
Legal
has,
tonight.
It's legal. Rachel was on earlier.
again has the room in the roof with the 4 roof lights. And again, the approved elevations, plot 1 and 2, plot 3. I won't show the photographs again under this. The applicants have also applied to discharge the planning conditions attached to the original consent. These related to condition 3 materials, condition 4 finished floor levels, condition 5 hard and soft landscaping, condition 6 boundary treatments, condition 8 access, condition 10 parking, condition 11 carports, condition 12 cycle and bin storage, condition 13 construction management, condition 14 biodiversity construction environmental management plan, condition 15 a Badger Run, Condition 16, external lighting. Condition 17, biodiversity enhancement. Condition 19, water usage. Condition 20, energy demand assessment. Condition 21, drainage system details. Condition 22, boundary treatments in relation to drainage. Condition 23, drainage maintenance and management. And condition 27, in relation to a bin collection point. The application proposes a material amendment to 19/00023/4, which granted planning permission for 3 dwellings. Principle of development remains acceptable. The principle of backland development was established under the approved application, and the proposed dwellings have largely been laid out in the same position. The surrounding dwellings have varied architectural style, external materials. The amended house types to the approved scheme still offer a traditional design, but use full gable ends to the front of plots 1 and 2, and have removed the chimneys, but still keep decorative banding. 2 roof lights have been added to plots 1 and 2 and 3, but overall the heights of the dwellings stay as previously approved. Plot 3 has been altered the design from the approved scheme to have a double bayed front with 2 sections of roof compared with the approved scheme, which offers a simpler design. The impacts on the amenity of the neighbouring dwellings has been reconsidered carefully in view that the positioning and size of the dwellings has changed and the loft spaces has been used for habitable accommodation by using roof lights. The application also proposes to discharge conditions associated with the approved permission. In relation to condition 3, the materials proposed for the dwellings are Marley modern plain tile, antique brown, an Ivanhoe Westminster brick, and reconstituted stone header and sill. The materials for the external access surfaces, a tarmac leading into the site, permeable paving leading to the houses, grey paving to access paths and rear houses. These materials are considered to be sympathetic to the character of the area and are viewed as acceptable. In relation to condition 4, finished floor levels have been shown on the plans. The land slopes from the east to the west, and this is reflected in the finished floor levels. The finished floor level for plot 3 is set 68.150 metres. The finished floor levels for plot 1 and 2 are set at 66.400 metres. These reflect the planning permission, with plots 1 and 2 set below plot 3. Condition 5 requires the submission of a scheme depicting hard and soft landscaping. The scheme shall include a 3-year post-planting maintenance schedule. The proposal includes the planting of silver birch, chanticleer and hawthorn trees, 28 juniper trees. Further soft landscaping is proposed to the amenity areas. Juniper skyrocket has been shown to the northern boundary. The landscape officer has advised that this is conical and narrow in form. It would not create a continuous hedge, but narrow individual plants with gaps in between. It's therefore recommended that this condition isn't discharged and a landscape condition is reimposed. Condition 6 requires the treatment of the boundary treatments, and that all boundary treatments shall provide for the free movement of wildlife to and from the site. A 1 metre 8-point high close border fence is proposed to the majority of the boundaries, and this will ensure privacy is maintained for the existing residents and create privacy for the new residents within their gardens. Further timber post and rail fence is provided to the garden of plot 2 to provide an unmanaged topsoil area to enclose natural self-seeded plant growth. The application has been amended following the advice from the Council's biodiversity officer that additional access under the fences should be provided. The proposal has been amended to include badger gates under the fences. It is, however, noted that details of the timber gates and retaining walls have not been provided, and a condition is required to be reimposed to request these details. Conditions 8, 9 and 10 relate to access, construction and materials. and visibility displays and parking arrangements. And the conditions are required to be retained and reworded. Condition 13 requires the submission of a method of construction statement. The Highway Authority have advised that the latest submission is not acceptable. Changes will be required. Further condition can therefore be applied to require this, along with a requirement on how the Construction Act will address noise and disturbance. Condition 14 requires the submission of a construction environmental management plan in relation to biodiversity. This has been considered by the Council's Biodiversity Committee, who raised no objection to the condition being discharged. Condition 15 requires details of a badger run to ensure that badgers that are known to inhabit the site would be able to traverse across and forage in the gardens of the new development, and requires details of the badger run to be submitted. The applicants have shown the information and 2 badger gates and a 1 metre wide badger corridor with open boarded fences. This information has been considered by the ecology consultant, who has raised no objection to the badger run, and the condition is therefore recommended to be discharged. Condition 16 requires the submission of a lighting design strategy for biodiversity and in relation to the badgers using the site. The plans have been amended since they were initially submitted, and all lighting has been removed apart from the porch lighting. The ecology consultant has raised no objection on this basis, as the lighting scheme did not previously demonstrate it would not harm badgers. The condition therefore agrees the porch lighting only, but will remain in place to require details of any further lighting to be specifically approved. Condition 17 requires the submission of a scheme for biodiversity enhancements, including details showing the location of the enhancements. The plans have been amended since they were initially submitted to show 3 bat boxes integrated into the houses, 3 bird boxes attached to the dwellings. The ecology consultant has raised no objection to these enhancements. Condition 16 requires the submission of a sustainability assessment relating to water efficiency, aimed at ensuring that the average water use in the dwellings will not exceed 110 litres per person per day. A water use statement has been submitted for each plot, advising that the predicted water consumption would be 109.38 litres per person per day, as required by Condition 19, and it's therefore recommended to be discharged. Condition 20 requires the submission of an energy demand assessment to demonstrate that a proportion of the development's energy requirements will be provided from on-site renewable energy. The applicants have proposed that this is met by an air source heat pump on plot 3. This has been considered by the Council's Sustainability Energy Officer, who has raised no objection. Therefore recommended this condition is discharged. Condition 21 requires the submission of the full details of the drainage systems in accordance with the principles set out in the PBA technical note dated 2019. Following consultation with the lead local flood authority, they have advised the applicant has submitted full details of the proposed drainage system, which is in accordance with the approved PBA technical note 2019. The submitted calculations demonstrate that the approved discharge rates have been achieved, that no flooding occurs for all events up to and including the 1 in 100 year plus 40% allowance for climate change event, whilst applying a 10% increase for urban creep. In addition, it is considered that the information submitted within the hydraulic calculations, drainage design plan, catchment plan, drainage construction detailed drawings provide the required details of all components of the drainage system, and as such it's considered that condition 21 can be discharged. Condition 22 requires details of the proposed boundary treatments, which shall not impact on existing flood flow routes. Following consultation, the lead local flood authority have advised that the curbing is provided, which demonstrates that the development will not impact on the existing flood flow routes as set out in the PBA technical note dated 9th of April 2019. It's therefore considered that condition 22 can be discharged. Condition 23 requires details of how the surface water drainage will be maintained and managed after completion to have been submitted to and improved in writing by the local planning authority. Following consultation, the lead local flood authority has advised that an acceptable maintenance and management plan has been submitted, which details that Churchgate Home will be responsible for the maintenance of the development throughout its lifetime, and details the proposed maintenance activities and their frequency, which are in accordance with the SUDS manual circa 753. As such, it is considered that condition 23 can be discharged. Condition 25 requires details to be submitted regarding information to be provided to prospective residents concerning aspects of any drainage systems that serve multiple properties, and the need for residents to maintain the fencing details subject to condition 22. The applicants have submitted a drainage design and maintenance homeowners guide, which explains why the permeable paving needs to be maintained along with maintaining the gaps under the fences. As such, it's considered condition 25 can be discharged. Condition 27 on the original consent required details of a bin collection point within 25 metres of the highway of Warfield Road. Under this application, the applicants have provided these details and the location of a bin collection point is annotated on the recommended approved drawing. These details are therefore required to be secured by a planning condition, along with advising the residents that they must place waste receptacles in this location for collection. This is a Section 73 application, which results in a material amendment to the approved application 19/00023/4. The amendments to the approved scheme are considered to be acceptable and would not significantly harm the amenity of the neighbouring dwellings or amenity of the surrounding area, in line with the extant consent. The application also seeks the approval of details submitted pursuant to a number of conditions of the original consent. Some of the details have been found to acceptable, such that the conditions are recommended to be discharged. However, the details submitted pursuant to conditions 5, 6 and 13 are not considered sufficient, and it is proposed that they are reapplied as under 19/00023/4. On this basis, the Section 73 application is recommended for approval in line with the committee report and the supplementary report. Thank you.
I think you need to have a little lay down in a dark room now, Katie. Okay, thank you very much indeed. Councillor Mrs Hayes, you've got a question.
Yes, confusion is something we've got before us. So looking at this, and when one says it's a Section 73 application, and then you consider that they're putting extra rooms in the roof, and then you have parking. I know we can't do anything about it, but this is where it comes in, as far as I'm concerned, by stealth. I have concerns with the parking by allowing this roof and the way they've gone about it.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Baddyboat.
Thank you, Chair. You have to bear with me. I do have a lot of questions. There's a lot here. Number one, there's only one applicant on this, only one name.
Two names.
Hold on. Am I right?
Sorry.
I think there's
sorry,
only
one
one.
name. One
Sorry?
name, yes.
One name, yeah? Not three. Okay.
I think that's all I can see.
Yeah. I'm also a little bit confused here. We've just approved an application for the same site. The conditions on those, in the ones we've just approved, are they identical to the previous conditions that we're now changing, or are they different?
Katie?
They're identical. However, on the last application, all the details weren't submitted, so we weren't able to approve them as part of the application. Provide further information to come in, whereas under this application, more details have been submitted.
So should we not, okay, well, it's a question. Should we not then be, this application should refer to the one we've just approved, because that's the condition that is current. Am I right?
Well, they can implement either one of the applications that are now approved. They could implement the original application, or they could implement the application that you have just approved, because there are now 2 planning permissions available on that site.
Yeah, I'm just talking more about the condition. What takes precedence?
This will if you approve it.
Okay, this one would. Okay. Can you just tell me the process of putting conditions on application? What is that process that officers go through to put conditions?
I think that's a question for outside of the meeting, for a general question between you and the head of planning, rather than a specific for this application, Councillor.
No, the reason why I'm asking this question is because I'm trying to place a value on the conditions that are presented to us and we make decisions on, because there's a lot of change here that we've been asked based on previous conditions. And in my head, I'm thinking officers go through a lot of work to put those conditions in for a reason.
Okay, conditions are put on a planning application to limit or to allow certain activities on a planning application. Conditions are in perpetuity.
Yeah.
All right. They do not have an expiry date.
Okay.
And therefore, when you apply for a planning application, if this committee or this authority approves a planning application, there may be certain activities that we want to limit or find more information on about that are outside of the normal policies. And planning applications will have conditions on them that have to be both reasonable and they have to be policeable, if you like.
So my question then is, if we're... Hello. It's not me.
Somebody got their volume on in the computer.
Hello? Hello? It's not me. I'm not online. Hello? Oh, much better. Thank you. So I'm trying to understand the weight given to conditions when it's just too easy just to say, well, we can remove that. It's no longer valuable.
Well, these are not being removed, are they?
Well, some of them are discharged.
They're being discharged, so they're saying yes, they've complied with them.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah. Okay.
Any other questions? Our Councillor, our Vice Chair.
Fine, thank you very much for that. Katie, just a point of... Oh, hold on, I'm putting my microphone on, haven't turned it off. Let's...
No, you don't
Oh, sorry. Oh, no, fine. Okay, sorry about that. Katie, on the earlier application, it did say that the development should be begin before the expiry of 3 years from the date of permission. But at the top of page 59, item number 1, it gives the expiry date, shall we say, of the permission as the 14th of April 2025. Should that be changed to reflect the previous condition in terms of the expiry date?
No, the condition reflects the expiry date of the extant consent. So the extant consent was only approved this year, so it's the same expiry date. It has to have the same expiry date as the extant consent.
Councillor Virgo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can I just question? It's really following Councillor Hayes' first interjection, actually. It seems a lot of change for a 73 application, because this, I mean, I thought 73 were very small changes, but these are quite big changes. And therefore, surely, we should only accept another planning application.
Katie, do you want to come back?
In terms of the changes, I don't think they are obviously material, which is what you consider under the Section 73 application is. It's a material amendment, whereas you have a non-material amendment where the changes aren't material. So the changes in terms of this application are slight adjustments to the boundaries, and they have amended the consent to keep the heights of the dwellings as the extant consent. So they're not actually changing the overall bulk in terms of the height. The dwellings are very much in a similar location. It's still an application for 3 dwellings. So I think it's a material amendment.
Sorry, Katie, interrupting you. I didn't mean to. The point I was really trying to make was that if we're putting rooms in the roof, which I understand this is,
we're not doing anything. The
well,
applicant
let
is
me
applying.
just rephrase
we
that.
are not doing
if
it.
the applicant is actually suggesting in this application that he wants to convert the roof into accommodation, that seems to me like a new application.
You've already approved that. Yes, on the earlier application.
I'm totally
Okay, any other
totally
questions?
confused, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, right, okay. Councillor Brown.
Just a little one. And the only thing I can spot different between 425 and 361 is the number of roof lights. Is there anything else, please?
Katie.
There's differences in the size of the dwellings and the position of the parking spaces. I think Andy wanted to.
Yeah, I was just going to point out the parking on 45 and 361 is different. The parking for plot 3 is split into 2 at the northern end of the turning head, excuse me, and 1 to the southeast of the turning head. And on the other application, there's 3 spaces together. Yeah.
Okay.
So, but
You've got 2 spaces here and 1 here. You've got 3 spaces down here. 425.
Yeah. Does the extent application have the spaces in the original?
In the same location as now
Yeah,
proposed.
in the same location.
No, the extant application had 2 car parking surface spaces and 1 carport for each of the dwellings. And those carports you can see on my shared screen are dotted in the red on the section 73. So originally plot 3 had 2 spaces in the carport to the north, and now it's proposed 2 spaces to the north and 1 space to the southeast.
Right.
And on plots 1 and 2, where there were carports proposed under the original application, they've been removed and replaced with another surface space.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so there's no other questions. I'll move the officer's recommendation.
58.
So on page 58.
Supplementary 6 to 11.
And as amended by the supplementary report on pages 6 to 11. I have a seconder, please. Councillor Birch, thank you. As you've seen, I'm not going to go through all of the slight changes to the conditions and the conditions that have been discharged because the applicant has undertaken them, and so therefore this is a relatively minor change, but of course it's like Kaizen, isn't it? It's little bits of lots of conditions. And so I'll ask you to bear that in mind when you take your vote. All right. Does the seconder wish to speak?
Reserved. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Barnard.
I think as the last period of time has shown, and can I say thanks to the office of going through it, I'd like, Chair, for you to take away to see if there is a more elegant way of summarising when changes are made, because if we're here to actually form, appropriate scrutiny of applications to make sure we pick these up, I'm not suggesting for one moment there's anything wrong with it. That was just really difficult to follow. And
It was, I agree.
And I know there are set ways of doing this, but in every other walk of life, you would have a summary document that would highlight where the main changes are, referencing where they are elsewhere. Now, I know we don't often have this situation, but I'd just like you to take away, Chair, to try and make it easy, because if we're struggling, and we sit doing this on a regular basis, if there's an element of public scrutiny, that might be quite hard for them to follow such changes as might exist. It's not a criticism, it's a plea for trying to find a more elegant way, which I think would spare our officer what was an absolutely marathon summary of conditions, and possibly could have shortened this meeting by about 20 minutes.
I agree with what you're saying. The problem is, and as you know, and you've reminded me on several occasions, planning is a quasi-judicial process. And unfortunately, if we take shortcuts on it, applicants and or objectors can actually say, members did not take those into consideration.
Can I just put, I wasn't proposing for one moment. We didn't see all this wonderful, elegant detail. I was just seeing that there should be some way of a roadmap that would help us and others to go through it from top to bottom. That's all.
Point taken.
Not taking.
Any other member wish to speak? Seconder, did you wish to speak?
Nobody spoken against.
And as nobody spoken against, all those in favour to approve? Did you? Yes. Well, I did ask earlier, and I've gone to the seconder, so I'm afraid I've got to go to the vote now. All those in favour to approve, please show. And those against? One against. Thank you, that's approved. Well, thank you very much indeed, members. And I'll draw your attention to the planning report, which is for your perusal at another time. And I declare the meeting closed. If you could just tell us when we're offline. Thank you.